My name is Grace Whitmore. I was once thrown out of my mansion in the middle of a snowstorm, empty-handed, pregnant with twins I didn't even know I was carrying. From the cold marble floors of the Carver estate to a crowded NICU, from public libraries to the podium of the State Bar Association, I've risen from rock bottom to something close to redemption. And if you've ever felt like you couldn't rebuild your life, let me tell you a different story. Before I share my journey, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you've ever fought through hardship for your family. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The slap came without warning. 5 years of marriage, and Nathaniel had never raised his hand to me before. But there I stood in our Boulder Mansion's marble foyer, adoption papers trembling in my hands, my cheek burning with the shock of his palm. "You went behind my back?" His voice echoed off the vaulted ceilings. "We agreed, Grace. No children." "We agreed to try," I whispered, touching my face. "The agency called. There's a baby." "There will be no baby." Margot Carver swept into the room like winter itself, her heels clicking against Italian marble. My mother-in-law's lips curved into that familiar, cruel smile. "Not in this family. Not from someone like you." Someone like me. The words hung in the air, heavy with everything she'd never quite said in 5 years. The Latin architect who'd somehow trapped her precious son. The woman whose womb would never quicken with Carver blood. I straightened my spine, a habit from childhood when my mother would tell me to stand tall, despite the whispers. "I'm his wife." "Not for long." Nate's words cut deeper than the slap. He pulled papers from his jacket. Divorce papers, I realized with numb shock. Already drawn up, already signed by him. My hands shook as I took them. "You planned this." "The moment you started this adoption nonsense," Margot confirmed. "Pack your things. You have an hour." Outside, December wind howled against the windows. The storm they'd been predicting all week had finally arrived, turning the Colorado mountains white. I looked between them, the man I'd loved despite everything, and the woman who'd made sure that love would never be enough. "It's a blizzard," I said quietly. "You're putting me out in a blizzard." "You should have thought of that before." Margot's voice held no mercy. "1 hour, or I call security." I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my bedroom for only minutes more, each step careful and measured. My body felt strange, heavy in a way I couldn't explain. Probably shock, I told myself, pulling a suitcase from the closet. I packed mechanically. The jewelry Nate had given me, I left on the dresser. The designer clothes Margot had insisted I wear to family functions stayed in the closet. I took only what I'd brought into this marriage. My mother's turquoise ring, my architectural portfolios, the quilt my grandmother had made. In the bathroom, I paused. The pregnancy test I'd hidden behind the face cream caught my eye. 2 pink lines I hadn't dared believe. A miracle the doctor said would never happen after my accident. I'd bought it 3 days ago. Too afraid to take it until this morning. Too afraid to hope. Now, standing in the bathroom I'd never use again, I wrapped the test in tissue and tucked it deep in my purse. My secret. My impossible, terrifying secret. The drive from Boulder to Santa Fe should have taken 6 hours. In the blizzard, it took 10. 10 hours of white-knuckle driving through mountain passes, my old Honda struggling against the wind. 10 hours to replay every moment of my marriage, looking for signs I'd missed. I'd been 17 when the drunk driver hit me. 3 surgeries later, the doctors delivered their verdict. Extensive scarring, damaged fallopian tubes, less than 2% chance of natural conception. I'd grieved then for children I'd never have. Nate had seemed like a gift, a man who said he loved me enough to adopt, to build our family differently. Lies, all lies. By the time I reached Santa Fe, dawn was breaking over the desert. The city looked like a watercolor painting, adobe buildings dusted with snow, the mountains pink in early light. I'd booked a motel room and a job interview weeks ago, back when I'd first sensed my marriage crumbling. Some instinct for survival, maybe, or just the habit of always having a backup plan. The interview was at a small architectural firm specializing in sustainable housing. I sat in their waiting room, exhaustion pulling at my bones when the world tilted sideways. Ma'am, can you hear me? I opened my eyes to fluorescent lights and concerned faces. The receptionist knelt beside me, her hand cool on my forehead. I'm fine, I tried to say, but the words came out slurred. Just tired. The drive. We've called an ambulance, she said gently. You've been unconscious for 5 minutes. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. They ran tests, asked about my medical history, drew what felt like gallons of blood. I lay on the narrow bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling tile, when a doctor entered with a peculiar expression. Mrs. Carver? He was young, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His name tag read Dr. Elijah Kapoor. I have your test results. I just need some sleep, I said. The drive from Colorado. You're pregnant. He said it gently, like he was afraid the words might break me. 9 weeks. With twins. The room went silent except for the beeping of machines. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. That's impossible. Yet here we are. He pulled up a chair and I noticed his hands. Steady, careful. The hands of someone who delivered miracles and tragedies in equal measure. Given your medical history, this is unusual. Beautiful, but unusual. And complicated. He explained about high-risk pregnancies, about scar tissue and the dangers of carrying multiples with a damaged uterus. His voice stayed calm as he outlined a world of bed rest and monitoring, of statistics that made my architect's mind reel. What are my chances? I asked when he finished. Real chances. Of carrying them to term. He met my eyes directly. With careful monitoring and some luck, maybe 60%, without proper care. He didn't finish. I thought of the blizzard, of Margot's cold smile, of the adoption papers Nate had torn in half. I'm alone. I just left my husband. I don't even have a job yet. You're not alone, Dr. Kapoor said quietly. Not if you don't want to be. This hospital has programs, support groups, and He paused, professional composure slipping for a moment. I specialize in high-risk cases like yours. If you'll let me, I'd like to help you through this. I touched my still flat stomach, imagining 2 heartbeats beneath my palm. Impossible children. Miracle children. Mine. Yes, I whispered. Help me. The apartment I could afford sat above a tire shop on the wrong side of Santa Fe. 1 bedroom, windows that didn't seal properly, a kitchen where only 2 burners worked. After the Carver mansion, it felt like a cardboard box. But it was mine, paid for with my dwindling savings and the part-time job I'd found shelving books at the public library. 20 hours a week at minimum wage, just enough to cover rent and ramen noodles, not enough for prenatal vitamins or the special diet Dr. Kapoor recommended. I made spreadsheets on the library computers during my breaks, trying to make the numbers work. They never did. At 20 weeks, my belly finally showed. The first time someone offered me their seat on the bus, I nearly cried. Such a small kindness. But it reminded me that not everyone was Margot Carver. You're glowing, mija, said Jorge Ramirez, the 70-year-old who lived next door. He'd taken to checking on me, bringing over his wife's leftover pozole, sitting on my steps in the evening to share stories of his grandchildren. When are they due? April, I told him, then laughed bitterly. If I make it that far. You will. He said it with such certainty. My Rosa had 4 babies, all early, all fighters. You have that same look, like a warrior. I didn't feel like a warrior at 29 weeks when my water broke in the cereal aisle of Walmart. I'd been reaching for the cheapest box of cornflakes when the pain hit. Sharp, twisting, wrong. Liquid pooled at my feet, and a woman nearby screamed. "Call 911!" someone shouted. "She's in labor!" "Too early," I gasped, dropping to my knees. "They're too early." The ambulance ride blurred into chaos. Sirens, needles, voices telling me to breathe. They rushed me into delivery, Dr. Kapoor appearing like he'd materialized from thin air. "Grace, listen to me." His voice cut through my panic. "They're coming now. We're going to do everything we can, but I need you to fight. Can you fight?" I couldn't speak through the contractions, but I nodded. Fight. I'd been fighting my whole life. Leo came first, so small he fit in Dr. Kapoor's palm. No cry, just a tiny mewling sound like a kitten. Then Mateo, even smaller, silent as prayer. They whisked them away before I could touch them. "Are they—" I couldn't finish the question. "They're alive," Dr. Kapoor said. "That's what matters now. They're alive and they're fighters, like their mother." The NICU became my world. Plastic incubators holding impossibly small humans, machines breathing for them, wires monitoring every heartbeat. I pumped breast milk every 3 hours, labeled tiny bottles with shaking hands, watched their weight in grams like a stockbroker watching markets. Jorge visited every day, bringing soup and sitting quietly while I cried. He never asked about their father, never judged the empty ring finger I couldn't stop touching. "You know," he said one afternoon, watching Leo's chest rise and fall. "I used to be a lawyer before I retired. Did mostly immigration work, but I know family law too." I looked at him through exhausted eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to need help, mija. Legal help. Those boys deserve support from their father." "He doesn't know they exist." Jorge's weathered face hardened. "Then maybe it's time he learned." The boys came home after 63 days in the NICU. 4 pounds each, still so fragile I was afraid to bathe them. The first night alone with them, I didn't sleep at all. Just sat between their borrowed cribs, watching them breathe. Jorge's suggestion echoed in my mind. Child support. The very thought of contacting Nate made my stomach clench. But formula was expensive. Diapers were expensive. The nebulizer Leo needed for his developing lungs was expensive. Instead, I did something else. I enrolled in night classes at the community college. Paralegal certification first. I could manage that while working and caring for twins. Jorge watched the boys during classes, refusing any payment except my promise to help others someday. "You design beautiful buildings," he told me. "Now learn to build justice." The days blurred together. Library mornings, racing home to nurse the boys, homework during their naps, classes at night. I studied family law with personal intensity, memorizing statutes about custody and support, about fathers who didn't know their children existed. My first job at a legal aid clinic paid barely more than the library, but it taught me everything. I translated for Spanish-speaking mothers, helped file restraining orders, watched senior attorneys fight for women who'd been left with nothing. Women like me. "You're good at this," said Patricia Winters, the clinic director, watching me calm a sobbing client. "Ever think about law school? With 2 toddlers and no money?" I laughed, but she didn't. "Scholarships exist. Part-time programs exist. You're already doing the work, Grace. Might as well get the degree." Leo's first severe asthma attack happened during my LSAT exam. My phone, turned off per test rules, had 17 missed calls when I finally checked it. Jorge's voice on the messages, trying to stay calm. "He's okay, mija. We're at the hospital. Finish your test." I drove to the emergency room in a haze, still seeing logic problems behind my eyelids. Leo lay in a pediatric bed, oxygen mask over his tiny face. Mateo curled beside him like a guardian. "Mama," Leo whispered when he saw me. The word broke me. Dr. Kapoor was there. He always seemed to be there when we needed him. "Severe attack, but he's responding well to treatment. This won't be the last one, Grace. You need to be prepared." Prepared. I thought of law school applications, of the impossibility of it all. Then I looked at my boys, my miracle boys, and knew I'd figure it out. Somehow. I started law school part-time the next fall. 4 years instead of 3, classes crammed around work and bedtime stories. The boys grew while I studied torts and contracts, took their first steps while I memorized case law. Other students complained about the workload. I just smiled and thought of the NICU, of impossible odds already beaten. My clinic work evolved. I specialized in custody cases, in mothers denied their rights, in the intersection of poverty and family law. The senior attorneys started sending me their hardest cases, the ones who needed someone who understood survival. "You give them hope," Patricia told me after a particularly brutal case, "because you've been there." One client stays with me still. Maria, undocumented, fleeing an abusive husband who'd threatened to take her daughters. She sat in my office, holding a baby while a toddler played at her feet, and I saw myself reflected in her exhausted eyes. "He says I'm nothing," she whispered in Spanish, "that no court will help someone like me." "He's wrong," I told her in her language, then switched to English for the legal assistant taking notes. "We're going to prove him wrong." We did. Protection order granted, temporary custody secured. The day the judge ruled in her favor, Maria hugged me and sobbed. Her daughters, safe now, drew me pictures I still keep in my desk. This was why Jorge had pointed me toward law, not for revenge or even justice for myself, but for this: the ability to stand between vulnerable women and the systems trying to crush them. To be the advocate I'd needed when I'd stood in that marble foyer, slap still burning on my cheek. The courthouse in Denver looked the same as every other: beige walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of old coffee and desperation. I was there for a client, representing her pro bono in a custody dispute. Just another case, until I walked into the courtroom and saw him. Nate sat at the respondent's table, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear, but his eyes were fixed on me, wide with shock. 5 years had passed since that night in Boulder. 5 years of silence, of rebuilding, of pretending he didn't exist. My client tugged my sleeve. "That's my husband's cousin," she whispered. "Nathaniel Carver. He's here as a character witness." Of course he was. The universe had a sick sense of humor. I straightened my secondhand suit jacket and approached the plaintiff's table like I hadn't just seen a ghost. Like my hands weren't shaking. Like Leo and Mateo weren't waiting at after-school care, existing in the same city as their father for the first time in their lives. The hearing proceeded normally until recess. I was gathering papers when Nate approached. Up close, I could see the changes. Deeper lines around his eyes, gray threading through his temple. Success hadn't made him happy. Grace. Just my name, but it held 5 years of questions. "Counselor Whitmore," I corrected coolly. "I represent Mrs. Carver in this matter." He flinched at his own last name. "You're a lawyer now." "People change." I snapped my briefcase shut. "If you'll excuse me, wait." He caught my arm gently, then immediately let go. "Please, can we talk after this?" "We have nothing to discuss." "I have things to say, things you should hear." He looked older, tired. "Please, Grace, 5 minutes." I thought of the boys, of child support never requested, of secrets kept. "Fine, 5 minutes." We met at a coffee shop after the hearing. I chose a table by the window, escape route clear. He sat across from me, fidgeting with his coffee cup like the confident Nathaniel Carver I'd known had never existed. "You look good," he started, then winced. "I mean, you look settled, happy." "I am. Truth, mostly." "What do you want, Nate?" "To apologize. To explain." He met my eyes. I was a coward. That night, Mom had drawn up papers months before, said if I didn't sign, she'd cut me off from everything. The company, the trust fund, all of it. "So you chose money." No surprise there. "I chose wrong." His voice cracked. "I've regretted it every day since. Grace, My phone buzzed. The after-school program, texting a photo, Leo and Mateo on the playground, identical grins beneath identical mops of dark hair. Nate's hair. I flipped the phone face down, but not fast enough. Who are they? His voice was strange, strained. No one you need to concern yourself with. But he was already pulling out his own phone, scrolling to the photo his cousin had showed him earlier. The one where I'd been in the background of a school event, standing between two boys. They're yours. Not a question. His face had gone pale. Grace, are they mine? I stood abruptly. This conversation is over. They have my mother's eyes. He stood too, desperate now. Grace, please. Are they my sons? No. The word came out hard, final. They're my sons. Mine alone. You made your choice 5 years ago. I left him standing there, coffee growing cold, truth hanging between us like a blade. That night, I held the boys extra tight. They squirmed and giggled, not understanding why Mama needed so many hugs. Why are you sad? Mateo asked, always the perceptive one. I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking. About what? Leo chimed in. About fathers who don't know you exist. About choices made in marble foyers. About secrets that couldn't stay buried forever. About how lucky I am, I told them, which was also the truth. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Expensive paper, Nate's handwriting. No return address. Inside, a single sheet. I dream about the children we talked about having. I see them in every playground, every school bus. If they exist, if they're mine, I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. I won't pursue this if you don't want me to. But if they ever ask about me, tell them their father loved them before he even knew them. Tell them he was just too weak to fight for what mattered. N. I burned the letter, but the word stayed. Why don't we have a dad? The question came at bedtime, like all the hard questions do. Leo asked it, but Mateo watched me with those serious eyes, waiting. I'd practiced this moment for years, but the words still stuck. You do have a dad. He just doesn't live with us. Why? Mateo this time. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that take them far away. Careful words, balanced between truth and kindness. Did he not love us? Leo's voice went small. I think, I said slowly, he didn't know how to love us the right way. But that's not your fault. Never think it's your fault. They exchanged one of their twin looks, communicating without words. Then Mateo asked, Can we write to him? My heart clenched. Why would you want to do that? Jeremy's dad lives far away too, Leo explained. He writes letters. Jeremy shows them at school sometimes. I thought of Nate's letter, of choices made and unmade. Let me think about it, okay? But they were persistent, the way 5-year-olds are when then they've decided something matters. They practiced writing their letters at the kitchen table, tongues poking out in concentration. Dear Dad, Leo's began, in careful kindergarten printing. I am Leo. I like dinosaurs and soccer. Do you like dinosaurs? Mateo's was more direct. Dear Dad, why did you go away? Are you coming back? I am good at math. I stared at those letters for hours after they went to bed. Such simple words, but they stripped away all my carefully constructed walls. My boys wanted to know their father. How could I deny them that? I contacted Nate through his lawyer. Professional, distant. The boys have questions. If you're willing to communicate through written letters, supervised by counsel, I'll consider it. His response came within hours. Yes, anything. Thank you. The first letter arrived 2 weeks later. Handwritten, which surprised me. Nate had always preferred typing. Dear Leo and Mateo, thank you for writing to me. I do like dinosaurs. My favorite is the velociraptor. I used to play soccer too when I was your age. And Mateo, I'm glad you're good at math. That will help you build things someday, like your mom does. I went away because I made mistakes, big ones, but it was never because of you. You need to know that. Sometimes dads mess up, and I messed up bigger than most. But I think about you every day. Love, your dad. I read it 17 times before giving it to them, searching for hidden barbs or manipulation. Found only regret. The boys were thrilled. They wrote back immediately, peppering him with questions. What's your favorite color? Do you have pets? Can you do a cartwheel? A correspondence began. Monthly letters, always through lawyers, always read by me first. Nate answered every question, shared stories of his own childhood, sent drawings of buildings he'd designed, never pushed for more, never mentioned meeting, until the day Margot's letter arrived. Different handwriting, shaky with age or emotion. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Grace, I am dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Weeks, they tell me, maybe months. I write not for forgiveness. I know better than to ask for that. I write because there are things you should know. I was 23 when Nathaniel's father left me for his secretary. Pregnant, humiliated, discarded like trash. I built my empire on that rage. Taught my son that love was weakness, that only power mattered. I created the monster who hurt you. But you survived what I couldn't. Thrived where I withered. Built love where I built walls. Those boys, my grandsons I've seen only in private investigator photos, they have what Nathaniel never did. A mother who chose them over everything. I am leaving them each a trust fund. Nathaniel doesn't know. The lawyer will contact you after I'm gone. It's not apology or redemption, just an old woman trying to balance the scales. Don't let them be like us, Grace. Don't let them choose money over love. Margot Carver. I sat with that letter until dawn, thinking about cycles of hurt, about women broken by men who claimed to love them, about different ways of surviving. When I finally told the boys their grandmother was sick, they asked if they could write to her too. She's not a very nice person, I warned. Maybe she just needs someone to be nice to her, Mateo said with 5-year-old wisdom. So they wrote, simple letters with crayon drawings. And Margot, dragon of the Colorado social scene, wrote back with stories of Nate as a boy, of dreams she'd had before bitterness set in. She died 2 months later, but not before telling her son the truth, that he had children, that she'd known all along, that her greatest regret was teaching him to be weak. The trust funds she left would pay for college and more. Blood money, maybe, but I'd learned to be practical about survival. Can we meet him now? Leo asked after the funeral we didn't attend. Our dad? I looked at my boys, so strong, so sure of being loved, and made the hardest decision yet. Yes, I said. We can try. The New Mexico Bar Association's annual gala wasn't my scene, but Patricia had insisted, buying my ticket, lending me a dress that didn't come from Target. You're receiving the Pro Bono Award, she'd said, for 5 years of service to immigrant mothers. You can't skip your own honor. So I stood at the podium in a borrowed gown, looking out at 500 lawyers and judges, trying not to think about how I'd once served these same people canapes at Margot's fundraisers. Grace Whitmore, the bar president read, has provided over 3,000 hours of free legal services to vulnerable women and children. Her work with asylum seekers and domestic violence survivors has changed countless lives. Applause filled the ballroom. I started to give my prepared remarks, short, professional, when I saw them. Nate in the back row, looking uncomfortable in his tux. Beside him, the boys in their first suits, Jorge helping them stand on their chairs to see better. My throat closed. I hadn't known they were coming. Then a young woman approached the microphone, Maria's eldest daughter, now 18, poised in her college freshman confidence. Ms. Whitmore saved my family, she said simply. When my father tried to take us back to a place where my mother would have died, Ms. Whitmore stood between us and deportation. She didn't just give us legal help, she gave us hope. My mother is here tonight, and she wanted me to say thank you. To tell everyone that Grace Whitmore doesn't just practice law, she practices love. More people came forward. Women I'd represented, children now safe, families reunited. Each story another piece of the life I'd built from ashes. When I finally returned to my table, Elijah Kapoor stood to pull out my chair. We'd been having coffee for months. Just friends, he insisted, though his eyes said otherwise. You're crying, he observed gently. Happy tears, I managed. The best kind? He handed me his handkerchief, and I noticed again those steady hands. The boys are very proud. They've been telling everyone their mom is a superhero. After the ceremony, I found them in the lobby. Leo and Mateo rushed over, faces bright with excitement. Mom, you're famous, Leo announced. Did you see us? Mateo added. Dad said we could come if we were super quiet. Dad, still strange to hear, even after 6 months of supervised visits. Nate approached carefully, like I might spook. I hope it's okay, he said. Jorge called, said the boys wanted to surprise you. It's okay. And it was. Time had dulled the sharp edges of old pain. We stood there awkwardly until a woman joined Nate, his fiancée, I realized. Young, pretty, nervous. This is Stephanie, Nate introduced. Steph, this is Grace, and Leo and Mateo. She smiled uncertainly. They're wonderful boys. Nate talks about them constantly. Dad's teaching me to build stuff, Leo informed me. With real tools. Supervised tools, Nate clarified quickly. Very supervised. I almost smiled. This man who'd chosen inheritance over family, now anxious about power tools and 5-year-olds. Change happened, I supposed. Sometimes. We should go, I said, gathering the boys. School night. Grace, wait. Nate pulled out an envelope. My mother's lawyer asked me to give you this. Something she wrote before she died. I took the envelope, recognizing Margot's spidery handwriting. To be opened on a night of triumph, it read. Later, after the boys were asleep, I sat with Elijah on my apartment's tiny balcony and opened it. My dear Grace, it began. If you're reading this, you've won something. An award, a case, a battle. It doesn't matter which. What matters is that you're still fighting. I spent my life believing power meant crushing others. You've shown that true power is lifting them up. The boys will know love because of you. They'll choose differently because of you. Nathaniel is weak, but not cruel. Perhaps with time, he can learn to be the father they deserve. That's your choice to make. But know this. You've already given them everything that matters. Rise high, Grace Whitmore. Rise for all of us who fell. M. Good letter? Elijah asked, watching me fold it carefully. Complicated letter. I looked at him, this man who'd delivered my miracles, who brought pizza for family movie nights, who never pushed for more than I could give. Elijah? Yes? Would you like to have dinner? A real dinner, not pizza with 2 5-year-olds throwing pepperoni? His smile lit up the desert night. I thought you'd never ask. The wedding was small, just how we wanted it. The hills outside Santa Fe glowed gold in the October light, and the boys stood beside me in matching suits, holding rings tied to pillows they'd insisted on decorating themselves. Do you, Grace Elena Whitmore, take this man? Judge Patricia Winters asked, having insisted on officiating. I looked at Elijah. Steady, kind Elijah, who'd seen me at my lowest and chosen to stay. Who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Who'd taught Leo breathing exercises for asthma attacks, and Mateo the beauty of numbers. I do. And do you, Leo and Mateo, take this man as your bonus dad? Patricia added, making the boys giggle. We do, they chorused. Jorge walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down his weathered face. Your parents would be so proud, mija, he whispered. The reception was in our backyard, at the house Elijah and I had bought together. Nothing fancy, just strings of lights and homemade food, lawyers dancing with social workers, doctors laughing with teachers. My two worlds merged. Nate came with Stephanie. He'd asked permission first, and the boys wanted him there. We'd found our rhythm over the years. Not friends, but not enemies. Co-parents focused on two boys who deserved peace more than we deserved anger. "Thank you," he said quietly during the father-son dance, watching Elijah spin the boys around, "for letting me be part of their lives." "Thank you for being better," I replied, meaning it. The surprise came during toasts. Maria stood, the woman whose case had changed my path. "6 years ago, I thought my life was over," she said in accented English she'd worked so hard to perfect. "Grace gave it back to me. But more than that, she showed me how to fight. Because of her, I'm in law school now. Because of her, my daughters have a future. So my toast is simple. May you receive all the love you've given to others." Others stood. Client after client, each with a story. The teenage girl whose custody case I'd won, now heading to college. The grandmother who'd gotten her grandchildren back from an abusive son-in-law. The asylum seeker whose children were born American citizens because I'd kept their mother here. "Did you plan this?" I whispered to Elijah. "They planned it themselves," he said. "Jorge just gave them the date." As the evening wound down, my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. "Mrs. Kapoor, this is Mercy General. Margot Carver asked us to call when she's asking for her grandsons. She doesn't have long." I found Nate, saw him pale at the news. We'd thought Margot had died 3 years ago, but she'd been in hospice, holding on. "Take them," I said. "They should have the chance to say goodbye." An hour later, we stood in a sterile room where Margot lay tiny and frail, the dragon reduced to paper and memories. "My boys," she whispered when she saw them. First time she'd ever called them that. Leo and Mateo approached carefully, these children who'd inherited her eyes but not her coldness. "Are you scared?" Mateo asked with his direct honesty. "No," Margot managed. "Not anymore. Are you happy?" "Very happy," Leo assured her. "We have 2 dads now, and the best mom and Jorge teaches us Spanish." "Good." Her eyes found mine. "Grace, the trust funds are for college," I finished. "We've told them. Thank you." "No," she breathed. "Thank you for showing them how to choose love." She died that night, hand held by the son she'd taught wrong and the daughter-in-law she'd tried to break. The boys cried, but not from grief. From the sadness of chances missed, of a grandmother they'd never really know. Back home, our wedding guests had cleaned up and left gifts piled on the porch. Elijah carried the sleeping boys inside while I stood in our yard, looking at the stars. Tomorrow, we'd fly to Hawaii for our honeymoon, the boys' first time seeing the ocean. Next month, I'd argue my first case before the state Supreme Court. Next year, who knew? "Coming to bed, Mrs. Kapoor?" Elijah called softly. I touched my mother's turquoise ring, now joined by a simple gold band, thought of all the women who'd stood where I stood, broken, lost, afraid. Thought of Jorge's first words to me. "You look like a warrior." Maybe I was. Maybe we all were. All of us who'd been knocked down and chose to rise. Who'd built love from loneliness, hope from hurt, families from fragments. "Yes," I called back, heading toward the warm light of home. "I'm coming." Inside, my boys slept safe. My husband waited. My life, imperfect, impossible, beautiful, spread before me like the desert after rain. Everything lost had led to everything found. From dust, I rose. And I would keep rising, pulling others up with me, until all of us who'd been told we were nothing could stand together in the light.